We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's May 1st here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Happy Monday, yeah.
Happy Monday.
Ki-hoon.
And Park Gi-hoon.
Good morning.
All right, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Like usual, we're going to start with our news feed, a news feed which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Recently, rumors that Paekdo Mountain will erupt in 2025 caught momentum. The mountain on the border between North Korea and China is thought to erupt around every 100 years. Though it officially erupted in 1903, some Russian records say that there were fumes in 1925. But the KMA soon responded by saying no volcanic action seems to be building up. Recent studies show that the movement of magma is actually more stable than usual. Baek Nak-sam, who helped 14,000 couples in Korea get married free of charge, died on Friday. For 55 years, the CEO of Shinshin Wedding Hall provided free wedding space, clothing rental, and photos for couples who couldn't afford expensive weddings. His wife later told news outlets that Paek was diagnosed with cerebral hemorrhage, and after a year of fighting the disease, Paek died at the age of 93. Last but not least, Netflix's latest show called Risky Business Japan is in the center of heated controversy, mainly centering around the host comedian Shin Dong-hyuk. In the show, Shin and his co-host Song Si-kyung interview various people in Japan's adult entertainment industry, and the two make many sex-related remarks, which has made some viewers uncomfortable to the point that they demanded Shin step down from other shows. Now, let's take a closer look at the last news item. It hasn't been a full week since Risky Business Japan was revealed on Netflix, but over the past few days, some viewers went to different websites, broadcast stations starring Shin Dong-hyuk in their programs. SBS's morning family program Animal Farm especially got a lot of comments. In just a single day, over 400 posts asked Shin to be removed from the program, even though he had been hosting the show for over 20 years. Now, Shin Dong-hyuk didn't respond directly to the controversy, but he did make a comment at the 59th Paeksang Arts Awards on Friday, saying that he is a very curious person who likes trying out various things and new challenges. Now, this news item caught my attention because I too watched this show on Netflix. I heard a lot about it.
Do you?
I did. I know.
You're interested in the
No.
the sector.
No, it was on like the top 10 of Netflix shows in Korea,
yeah.
so I was quite curious about it. But then I was quite surprised that there was this type of controversy. What about you, Ki-hoon?
Well, I'm a curious person too. And I'm a big fan of Shin Dong-hyuk, and I started watching the series as well. I found it very hilarious, but informative at the same time, as we can see the different cultural side of our neighboring country. And it clearly tells the viewers that it's adult-only content. So I think netizens should be a little more mature when they post things on internet and know exactly what they're criticizing. And at the end of the day, Shin Dong-hyuk is a comedian and an entertainer. He's not an ambassador of animal cruelty. So I think for me, he's doing a fantastic job. I'm a big fan of him again, and I just want to see more of him on different shows.
Right, taking on new challenges.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of netizens like you, Ki-hoon, that said there should be no problem because there's no correlation between Shin Dong-hyuk, hosting and appearing on these type of shows and appearing on Animal Farm at the same time. But still, some netizens are very concerned. They're actually not too happy with the show itself because the Netflix show has been scorned for promoting the adult entertainment industry and sexual exploitation, which is all illegal in South Korea. But what were your thoughts on this show?
Well, first of all, that's why it's based in Japan, where it's all legal, and it's where it's, almost, it's not frowned upon in Japan as a culture itself. Korea is obviously very conservative and all that, so it makes sense that it's been a bit, shunned upon. But for in the case of Shin Dong-hyuk, he's been breaking ground in the Korean industry as well, with TV shows like 마녀 사냥.
Yes.
Big hit. One of the first where people got to freely talk about sex and love and in marriage and whatnot, in relationships and things like that. And that was a big hit. I'm sure that faced a lot of criticism in the beginning as well. So as being in the showbiz as well, I don't think it makes sense just because he's got, a Netflix show that's been funded and written by Netflix that he's been featured on to be criticized so heavily.
And you think it's the right step in the right direction?
In the sense of?
in the sense of promoting better sex education. We're talking about sex freely.
I didn't see all of it, so I can't be the fair judge of that. But if you think so, then we'll put it there.
It's based on our viewers. I think everyone could have different thoughts on that. And that was our news feed for this Monday. Moving on to today's discussion topic. So today is Labor Day, an annual holiday celebrating the achievements of workers nationwide. And this day originated from an American labor union in the 1880s that demanded 8-hour days. Now, though it is a public holiday, ironically, most people do go to work here in Korea, including us. And let's take a look at how far our work conditions have evolved and what type of workers are taking up the job market at the moment. MZ workers. That's the term referring to young Korean workers who stereotypically don't like staying late at the office just because their superior is still there, think of company get-togethers as an extension of work hours, and often quit within 3 years into their job. Many young Koreans are quite offended at being grouped together like this. That's because behind this MZ worker lies a negative connotation, such as being lazy and not having strong willpower or determination to make it big compared to older generations. Not surprising, given that most can't even buy their own apartment in Seoul just through their annual income. With soaring living costs, young workers are losing hope and motivation to settle down with the money they earn at work. Some are calling for 4-day work weeks so they can better use their personal time and secure a reasonable work-life balance. Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. What are some key traits global millennial and Gen Z workers have? 2. It's thought that young workers quit easily or change their jobs by the minute. Then what are some companies or specific work environments young workers want to be at? 3. How are companies accommodating this growing workforce's traits and demands? We're going to be talking about the job market in Korea and key characteristics among young workers. So let's start off by looking at how many young Koreans have jobs these days. Xiong, why don't you walk us through?
Yeah, so according to Korea's Ministry of Employment and Labour, youth unemployment rate published in February 2023, this year, was around 9 out of 10 Korean youth were in employment. So expected entrance to job sectors at around 30% for SMEs, government and public sector jobs at around 25%, and large corporates and global conglomerates at just below 8%. So we also see a huge increase in startups as well, at around 9% as well. The Korean government categorized 청년, youth in the Korean language, up to the age of 34 or 39 depending on different support programs. This is the official age Korean citizens can receive government youth support. So of course everybody wants to be employed at one of the world famous Korean conglomerates that are known globally as well. But the limitations of the competitiveness in this sector often makes it a bit depressing and discourages the Korean youth as well.
For sure, but it's really quite difficult to land your perfect job, right? Everyone wants to go to their perfect job or dream job, but even if they land there, some tend to quit within like 5 years of getting it. So why do you think quitting has become the norm among millennials and Gen Z in Korea?
Well, there are several reasons why many millennials and Gen Zs quit only after a few years of working. These were some points voiced out based on interviews from workers under the age of 30 with the experience of quitting within 2 to 3 years into the job. 1, not getting paid enough for the amount of workload given. We all know that.
Yes.
2, uncomfortable working environment. Being asked too many personal questions from superiors.
Right.
I've been there and done that as well. Yeah. 3 is wanting to study more to pursue a more professional career and to achieve their ultimate dream. And 4, lastly, not having enough work-life balance. Now, with the increase in fast quitting from youngsters, the steps you need to take to officially and legally quit can be done by proxy now. And as new firms have started this new business model to save time and effort of tedious paperwork and going through that awkward moment of talking to your HR managers when you want to quit. So it's quite interesting how new firms are, emerging.
For sure, they're accommodating to the demands of youngsters.
Yeah.
Now, what type of work environment do young people want to work for, and which companies are they looking for then, Xiong?
Yeah, so South Korean millennials and Gen Zs have been having a difficult time finding the work they truly appreciate. From a survey conducted by the Federation of Korean Industries early last month, the following are what Korea's younger generation want from their ideal company. Let's have a look at the screen. From the survey, Korean MZers wanted a company that guarantees work-life balance at the top of their preferences, followed by salary and performance compensation system, a company that guarantees retirement age, as well as job security and chance for personal development, whilst putting horizontal corporate culture, good communication, as well as social contribution by the company on their list of priorities when looking for a workplace.
So these are quite contrary to what you mentioned, Ki-hoon. If these aren't kept in, they would quit their jobs. So what are your thoughts on what type of workplace or work environment Gen Z and millennials want?
You know, I remember discussing the 4-day working week on the show, and I think, you know, this is making positive progress and showing good results. According to a survey conducted on around 500 millennials, almost 50% answered guaranteed work-life balance, just like what Xiong mentioned, to the question, what working condition makes a good firm?
Right.
And an IT company implemented a 4.5 working day week once every month from 2017. They increased it to twice every month, and from this year applied it every week. And surprisingly, the company saw a steady rise in the total sales, proving that long work hours doesn't necessarily increase working productivity and performance.
And that's
Positive
why,
signs.
for instance, and that's why we're seeing a lot more countries implement 4-day work weeks, and that's what youth in Korea have been demanding for quite a long time. And it shows that we have unique characteristics compared to older generations, right? So why don't we take a look at the key traits millennials and Gen Z workers have?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the younger generation have been having a more difficult time, as we've been seeing, finding employment compared to the previous generation, where they had less strict employment policies, regulations, and also competition. So in particular, between the ages of 15 to 29, we had almost 500,000 youths who weren't involved in any economic activity, meaning that they are not currently in education, not preparing for jobs or actively seeking for one, and not enrolled in the military service either. Basically just resting at home. So one of the main reasons that around 18% was because they find it difficult to find jobs they personally prefer. So around 70% of Korean millennials and Gen Zs have university education, which is the highest level in all of the OECD countries as well. So I mean, this combined with the fact that there's an immense wage gap between SMEs, small to medium enterprises, and large corporates or conglomerates has made it more difficult for youth to get work. For example, at the end of 2021, the average monthly salary for an SME was around $2,000 compared to a large corporation, which is around $5,000. So it's less than half of what you get if you work in a large corporate.
Right.
So I mean, that's really due to the change in social environment and education as a whole. Characteristics and expectations in the job market from the youth have changed as well.
Especially because I feel like our generation is more prepared. As you mentioned, we have a higher education level, and we also expect to achieve self-satisfaction and achievement in our jobs, but that's really hard, right?
Right. And I guess, you know, I think a lot of younger generation are more open to expressing their feelings overtly and not, you know, they don't really like walking on eggshells like the older generation. I think we prioritize experience, personal life, and of course creativity. So thus we're not afraid to quit if the work doesn't really match our needs. And you know, life is short, and trying new things out don't hurt as long as you can take full responsibility of your actions.
All right, and we're now going to hear from an expert and see whether these traits are just confined to Korea or whether global millennial and Gen Z workers abroad can relate. So with it being Labor Day, we're going to analyze global millennial and Gen Z workers' key traits by including Dr. Marlon Twyman, Assistant Professor of Communication at the University of Southern California. His area of expertise includes reading the younger population. Great to have you with us again, Dr. Twyman.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, Dr.
All right, so Dr. Twyman, our panelists here listed a few key traits we found among Korean millennial and Gen Z workers. And do you think they're similar to the traits found among young American workers or employees in other parts of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main things that I think is a lot of fun with the new generation coming up is the level of creativity that they display and the desire to display that at work in various formats. So what I typically see from a lot of my students and mentees is that they look for ways to express themselves through not just like their reports or their deliverables, but also their identities in their online spaces, in front of their friends, in front of future and past employers as well. It's a lot more engagement, I would say, around building out an image, or for lack of a better word, a brand. And they're very creative in how they do that for themselves these days.
Right, and I don't think our generation relies on companies to build their own brand. They're looking for they try to build their own brands by themselves, right?
Absolutely. That is something that I've seen develop with my cohort, so the 30-somethings and then now the 20-somethings coming after us. We've started to move away from our primary identity being whoever's our paycheck name, right? And we're starting to be person-focused, person-first, and I just so happen to belong to this current organization for the time being. But yes, there's a lot more independence and agency and personalized identity these days, which I think is actually healthy.
Definitely. And I also hear in the States, more companies are looking for senior employees instead of newbies, and that's because they're afraid young workers will quit soon. Is that true?
You know, I would say that there is definitely a blend. So a lot of the major well-resourced organizations are targeting both. That's still happening. But to your point, what we're seeing is because of this reputation, I would say, that the younger generation has regarding the lack of loyalty or the lack of stability that they're looking for in the workplace, there are some types of organizations that are trying to focus on people that they perceive as being more or less long-term oriented or being more or less stable. And it is an interesting shift. So for, I think I would say our parents' generations and before, they did look at being, you know, one company type employee, a lifer. I don't know if you all have that term in South Korea, but nowadays, my students, they think staying anywhere longer than 5 years is a display that you're not able to move on, that you're not capable of competing in the labor market, which is a totally different shift.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, as you mentioned rightfully, you know, life of work. I mean, in Korea, actually, funnily enough, a lot of the youth do want to stay in a job for a long time. That's why they want to work in the public sector. They want to work in the government jobs, so they have safety, a job security as well. And I think, in a sense, you know, the loyalty issue is a generalization as well. A lot of youth, of course, want to show themselves as their own image, have their own brand. But do you think in the US as well, it's just you know, do you think the youth don't have any loyalty, or is there a percentage of the youth that do display a level of loyalty to their companies as well?
So I think that's a fair point. Absolutely, that there are both. It is difficult to get into percentages when we're talking about the age range as well as the other relevant demographics. But aside from, I would say, public service, you also do have people who do land that dream job, do land at that top corporate, and it's exciting for them, right? And they will want to stay at a market leader or the company that has dominant market share. But just being honest about the competitive landscape, understanding how many slots are available in a public service organization or in a highly desirable organization where you might not want to leave. There's only so many of those opportunities, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people, probably myself included, we're not necessarily fortunate enough to land in a place that just checked every single box for the foreseeable future. But I agree with you. There are definitely going to be a segment of that population that would totally be content and happy if they landed that awesome opportunity first.
All right, and hopefully we see more companies try to accommodate the demands and needs that young workers are asking for, because they're taking a bigger proportion of the workforce.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Twyman. It was a pleasure to have you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, and Q, Dr. Twyman made a lot of key points that really, you know, joggled our minds a bit there. What did you think?
You know, I think when he said a lot of millennials and Gen Zs, they prioritize personalization, and I think it's very different to the older generation where they just stuck to one job to secure that, you know, like career. But nowadays, you know, things have changed, you know, everything's different. So I think more millennials and young Gen Zs, you know, seeking different jobs to suit their needs it's a natural thing.
For sure, and I think more companies are actually trying to do that, like big companies, for instance, allow people to change their divisions once they're into year 2 or 3 into their
Gives
job.
them freedom.
Exactly, but what do you think could be done more to help, you know, Gen Z and millennials stay at the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, sort of, as the survey we just saw from the Korean Federation of Korean Industries, one of the main things were an opportunity for personal development. So they want to be someone who they can present as a viable candidate at any workplace, in different companies, in their sector especially. So I think giving that opportunity, as well as transparency in communication between the management and the employees, is a key in enhancing the youth sort of engagement in the workplace as well.
For sure. And before we continue our talks, we're also going to hear from our global viewers. We asked them what their dream job was. So take a look at the screen to find out. Kokep Crocker said, right now, my dream job would be something with very flexible hours and limited human contact. Something related to the food industry, like if they allow dishwashers to work sporadically. Platinum Trophy said, well, actually, my dream job is to advance and assist technology in all aspects with South Korea and Japan, and possibly become a producer or studio mix engineer. These are 2 of my passions. Raul279 said, working in a hotel in a paradise destination like Bali or being a travel guide. My actual job has nothing to do with my dream job, but there's always time to look for that. Now, I think this is a good segue for us to head into our final thoughts now. What I think is needed is more platforms for, you know, millennials and Gen Z to deliver what they want in the workplace. So very briefly, Hugh, what do you want to see?
You know, everyone will agree that we will be taking up the main portion of the workforce, and without this large group, the future will not be in good hands. So I think companies should cater more to fit the needs of the younger workers to maximize productivity and efficiency. So instead of just viewing millennials and Gen Zs as unprofessional, immature, and picky, you know, firms can take this as an opportunity of investment for future success.
Investment for future success and a stepping stone for you to find out who you are and achieve all the things that you want to do. All right, and we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics that young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Ji-young
My pleasure, Ian.
and Park Ki-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.